Welcome to Breakup Bites. Today's topic is we're separating. Now what? And the reason Jennifer and I chose this topic is when people are separating, they don't really know what to do. I mean, many people will know, I'm going to get a lawyer, I'm going to get a lawyer. But there are other options and other alternatives. And as I always say, it's always best to have the information so you can make a knowledgeable decision and do what's best for your individual situation.
And one of the things that I always find is people don't understand that there are different processes that you can go through while going through separation. Some people think that an automatic go-to is hiring a litigation lawyer because
Mhm.
you don't know the other alternatives that are available. So I think it's going to be important for our viewers who are interested to understand the different steps that you can take and what might be the most appropriate for you.
I agree. So, a couple of different routes that people can take. Um, One is collaborative law. And Jen, do you want to speak on collaborative law a little bit?
Sure. So I'm collaboratively trained, and one of the benefits of going through the collaborative process is that there's no threat of litigation. And that can be good or bad depending on your situation and who the other party you're dealing with is. But collaborative law is a process where you have typically two lawyers, so one for each party. You have a financial professional and a family professional. And the financial professional obviously helps with working out all the different financial aspects of the situation. And the family professional works on the parenting plan and anything that has to go into that. And then the two lawyers will advocate for each party, but they also do it in a collaborative way where there's no nasty letters back and forth and there's no threats of court, like I mentioned. It's all how can we figure this out? What is it that we need to suggest and maybe propose that the other party would feel comfortable with? How can we do so in a way where we're not letting everything that you're entitled to go, but trying to actually come to an understanding where everyone can leave and feel like they're not completely gouged, which is a pretty good process for a lot of people.
So, it's very goal orientated. And what I like about that process is that you're not having letter going back and forth or numerous letters going back and forth because anybody who's gone through litigation knows that that can greatly add up your costs before you even get anywhere. So, collaborative law can be a more economical way for parties to get to an agreement. The other thing that I like about collaborative law is because you have it's like teammates and we're working towards a solution and working towards the finish line together. Um, there's not going to be as much animosity when it works. So it's going to help people maintain relationships or better relationships, build trust, because especially when there's children, um, these people may be having to deal with one another for a long time moving forward. Actually, for a lifetime, because when you have kids, there's always going to be something, whether it's the high school graduation, the university graduation, a new baby, a wedding, whatever it is. So it can keep or it can keep things from getting nasty.
Mhm. And it's interesting because there's typically a stigma against collaborative law that if the file is contentious, then it's not appropriate. But that's a misunderstanding. I've dealt with a lot of different files in collaborative where there was actually no contact orders, and the police were involved, and the parties could not communicate. But there was still an understanding that they wanted to keep the file out of court, and they wanted to agree on something that was beneficial for everyone. So if they were going through the litigation process, which we'll explain in a second, it would have been way more expensive and it would have been way more difficult for these parties to settle because both lawyers would be against each other as opposed to trying to figure out one common path. So, definitely, it is not something that you should avoid if there is a more contentious file. It's just dependent on your preference.
I think that's very helpful for a lot of people to know that.
Mhm.
So litigation, another option. In litigation, each party hires their own lawyer to represent them. And lawyers will do it differently, but typically there will be some letters going back and forth, and maybe then conferences that include both people together. But in litigation, typically somebody is protecting my best interest, somebody's protecting your best interest, and hopefully we can come to some middle ground. Litigation can be beneficial for people when one personality is impossible to deal with, because sometimes there's no choice but to go to court. And when does that happen? Well, let's say you're not having proper financial disclosure. Um, let's say there's a lot of danger and a child's not safe. There are many reasons why court may be the only option. So litigation is an option in those cases.
Mhm. Yes, and also if one party is not emotionally ready to divorce, sometimes they
Good
keep
point.
putting roadblocks in front, no matter how reasonable a solution may sound to an outsider. The person who's not divorce ready will just keep blocking it and keep prolonging the process, and then it would not be appropriate for a collaborative or any of the other processes except for litigation.
Definitely. As a mediator, I think I'm always saying to people, one of the benefits of mediation, which we're going to speak to, is while you're both going to have to compromise, you know your family best. And if you can come up with a solution or agreements that are palatable, that you can live with, not necessarily, I got everything that I want, um, they happen a lot quicker than going the litigation process. And you have a lot more control because at least somebody, a third party, isn't making a decision for you and your family.
Mhm. That's not to say that if you hire a litigation lawyer that you can't settle your file outside of courts.
Mhm.
Most all files, not all, but most all files are recommended to try alternate dispute resolutions. So things outside of the court, whether that be mediation or mediation arbitration, which we'll touch on in a moment. But it's pretty important to note that just because you have a lawyer that can go to court doesn't mean that you have to go to court in order to settle your file.
Exactly. Exactly. And another risk of litigation, just thinking about that, is it's an open record. So your children can Google you, your friends can Google you. This happened to a friend of mine recently, and it was her daughter, found mom. Like, it's so embarrassing. So there is something nice about not having this in a public forum. But again, sometimes there's no choice and it's the only route to take.
Mhm.
Which brings us to one of the other options, mediation.
Right. I was actually going to say arbitration, just because you pointed out such a wonderful subject, and that's the subject of privacy. Arbitration is basically having a court, a judge, but privately done, so that it isn't open for public. So you have your file being seen in front of an arbitrator who is going to make a decision for you and your ex and the things that you guys are in conflict about, but it isn't public record. So it is a way to get things done quicker, and it's a way to get things done in a private and confidential manner, so that it isn't something that's Googleable. Googleable.
Exactly, exactly. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So this is going to be a two-part series, episode, whatever you want to call it. Um, Stay tuned for part two of We're Separating Now What? And on behalf of Jennifer and myself, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.